Every day, you see somebody you might not know or you do know, and you judge them immediately. And usually the judgments are negative, and the judgments might be true, but you'll have a judgment on somebody, and it doesn't serve you or them in any way, shape, or form. So I really try every day to recorrect those judgments in my own head. I don't need to say them out loud, but somebody doesn't know if I'm judging them or not. But when I see
Yeah.
somebody and I think something negative, I try to say a prayer for them and try to say something good about them just to myself, because that for me is that constant redirection.
What is up, Impact Heroes? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rick Ornelas. Thank you for spending some time with us today, because we know time's a valuable resource and we're going to make it worth your while. I appreciate each and every one of you, not just for listening, but for who you are. I know you're sparking change to make the world a better place every day, and I am humbled and grateful for your efforts. It takes all of us doing our part to spread positive change, and that's what this show is all about. Motivating you with stories of struggle, courage, and hope to empower you to make a difference in your life and the lives of others.
In case you missed it,
I have hired coaches that are well beyond where I'm at. I've gone to high-level retreats of women that are way further along in business. I want to get in those rooms because I know when I get in that room, new ideas are birthed every single time, because you get out of your own environment. Like if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to find a new room.
That's incredibly valuable. You don't achieve the goals you have by being the person you are today. You grow into the person you need.
available everywhere you listen to your podcasts.
Welcome back, Impact Heroes. Today we have the pleasure of speaking to our latest iSpark Change social impact hero, and he is someone truly exceptional. Our guest today brings together servant leaders who want to increase their income, impact, and influence. He's an entrepreneur, social media marketer, and strategist who can guide you to reach the next level. He helps others build relationships, provide support, educate, create connections, and grow personally and professionally. Singing my language right there, buddy. He's a leadership communication expert who helps leaders to find clarity, take action, and succeed with integrity, super important, making them the expert in their industry. He's an award-winning radio personality, speaker, and influencer who for over 20 years has been connecting and engaging with people in various forms of broadcasting. And I will add that he has a great broadcasting voice, which you will hear for yourself in a minute. He's a fantastic listener who knows how to make someone feel heard, and an all-around amazing guy. Please welcome the extraordinary, engaging, passionate, and inspiring host of the Unstuck Movement podcast, Rob Wentz. Rob, welcome to the iSpark Change podcast.
Rick, thank you so much for the amazing introduction. It's an honor to be here. And all the things you said about me, I feel the same way about you, man. So it's really cool to be in your presence. I'm glad that I got a chance to know you, have you on my show, and it's really an honor to be here.
Well, very cool. Thank you. Yeah, I always want to honor my guests with their intro. It's your story. I just shared it in a nice fashion, and the big thing about that for me is that when I was on your show, Rob, is that I got that feeling that you get when you're like, oh man, I've known this guy forever. And, we had talked for just a few minutes, one other time before. And it's always cool when you get that feeling, because in now that I spend a lot of my time on Zooms and calls like this, and you're online with someone from who knows where in the world, is that can happen a lot more frequently than it used to happen, at least for me in my life, is that you meet those occasional one-off person, you meet them somewhere, and you're like, wow, this person's really cool, I could hang out with this person. But now you meet them online, they can be from anywhere, right? And so that's the feeling I got when I met you. I was like, yeah, I got to talk to this guy more. He's really cool.
And that's the thing too. I think that in day-to-day life, I live in a fairly small town, about 40,000 people, right? So I know some amazing people where I live. There are incredible people here that I have very tight connections with. But I also meet a lot of people that, you have to work into a relationship with. And what I find works so well in life, when you have referrals and people, you meet somebody who's amazing and you say, hey, do you know anybody else who is like you that I could connect with? And they start connecting you to those other people. Then every conversation you end up having is like a meaningful conversation with somebody who also is very intentional. And I love that about the space that we work in and that we live in digitally, is you get connected to so many great people that you automatically feel like you've known for a while, just because they show up as themselves and you show up as yourself. And there's no, I don't know, I feel like a lot of the conversations I have now, since they're connected and there's intentionality behind them, immediately it's easy. And I love that, because I feel like throughout the younger portion of my life, I didn't have those immediate, easy connections, and learning how that happens is such a valuable thing that I'd like to teach other people about too.
That's an incredible insight that you just pointed out, Rob, about the connection and intentionality, because I'd agree that when I was younger, either I wasn't focused on that, or others weren't focused on that, or, I was probably focused more on myself and not on how to, serve and support others. I may have even talked about that on your show. And now I'm in a different place, just emotionally and spiritually and with where I'm at. And it does make a huge difference. It does make a huge difference in what the outcome of that interaction is going to be, right? Whether it's digitally or virtually, or whether it's in person, it's going to have a totally different outcome.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to... It feels like the initial layer of, I don't know, awkwardness, or you kind of stumble through trying to figure out who somebody is. When you get referred to somebody and that you know that they're friends and they're approved by other people in your life that you really enjoy, you're like, okay, this is going to be easy. And that's how I felt whenever I met you.
Yeah. Same thing. It's interesting because you talk about being authentic and that awkwardness. I think and maybe it's the virtual nature is I probably encountered that a few times where I'm talking to people and maybe they're not as open or as authentic. I even had an interview on this show, and that episode hasn't aired yet, where the person, I had to really get her to that place before she was really opening up. And most guests, I mean, we're getting pretty deep early in the conversation, and maybe that was an uncomfortable place for her, or maybe that's not what she's accustomed to. But I feel like yourself or myself, maybe because we have these conversations more often, these type of conversations, that to get to that place seems like an easier access to get there.
Yeah, that's true. And maybe it can be jarring for some people because they're not prepared for it. They need more of the surface stuff first to go to the deeper stuff, right? To go into the deep waters.
Yeah, exactly. So on that note, so let's we started chatting, and we got to dive into the the first question I ask all of everyone on this podcast, every guest, is because, Rob, we see you as someone who's spreading positive change, someone whose actions have a positive effect on humanity, and someone that, by our definition, we call a social impact hero. So obviously you talk to a lot of people, obviously you work with a lot of people, you have your show, you impact, your reach and impact is significant. We see you as a hero. Do you see yourself as a hero?
Wow, man. Do I see myself as a hero? I'm going to receive it. I'm going to say, yeah, I do, I guess, see myself as a hero, but I don't see myself like that all the time, right? I think on a daily basis, it goes back to the intention thing. This is really interesting you're saying this right now. I was on a podcast yesterday, and there was 5 of us in the room. And so on this podcast, the lady's name is Sanit Van Grida. She's from South Africa, and she has an amazing platform. And I've been on this show now twice. And at the end of the episode, we go around the room and we give each other the words that come to mind for each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm not kidding.
I've been on her show as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the show, she said, my word for you is Superman. So when you just said hero, I'm like, I don't really think of myself as a hero. But when she said that, and everybody in the room was like, yeah, I'm going with that word too. And I'm like, geez, you guys, it felt really, really good. And I think, so often in our life, when somebody gives us like a compliment and we don't see ourselves in a certain way, we don't receive it. And so I decided I'm going to receive that. That's how they're seeing me. That's how they're talking about me. And this is authentic. I'm going to receive that. So going to say, yes, Rick, I do see myself as a hero, and I need to hold on to that, because if we see ourselves as a hero, then we're going to show up like a hero. Not saying that I'm going to try to save every single person, or not that like I'm not going to show up differently because I am a hero. I'm just going to show up as me. But it seems like when we show up authentically, that is kind of a hero's way of showing up, because that's definitely not how I used to show up in life. So if I'm seen like that, then that is a beautiful thing, and I'm going to receive that and live from that.
Yeah. And I would add, you have the Clark Kent glasses too. So you could, there's always that. So you could be Superman by virtue of, you take the glasses off and you can turn into Superman.
Right. Very true. Yeah. I just need a phone booth, and they're hard to find these days.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's interesting that Rob, that you talk about not always being that way, right? About not always being that way, or not always showing up authentic. So part of being a hero is it's an acronym. Okay. Honors their purpose, engages their audience in their mission, ripples their message to others to spread positive change, and then opens their heart to the world. So part of it is that opening their heart to the world. So what was the change for you and I'm getting a little ahead because, normally I'd want to know about your hero origin story, about how you started on this path, and maybe they're the same thing, but what was the change for you that led to you being able to be authentic and to open up, your heart to others?
There's been so many things throughout my life that have led me to this, but back when I'm going to go back to the origin story. So I always loved radio broadcasting when I was young. So even when I was 10 years old, I was doing a pretend radio show in my bedroom. I got into radio broadcasting when I was 15. I spent 20 years in radio, and I didn't realize it back then, but really what I was trying to do, and what I now realize about myself, is I always felt like there was a version of me inside of me that I didn't know how to get out. And so I think I went into radio not knowing that I was going into it trying to become my authentic self, or trying to get this voice out that I didn't know how to get out. And over the years that got better and better, and I got better and better at bringing that part of me out. But I was always doing it kind of selfishly, self-centeredly. And I had my son 10 years ago. I became an entrepreneur about 7 years ago. And in that same time frame, I also got saved, and I found Jesus in my life, and a connection with God. And as that connection with God has grown, and this has not happened overnight by any means, but it's definitely, I'm at the best place in my life in this right now, where I really am feeling who God created me to be, and feeling okay being who God created me to be, and that I'm allowed to be that. I think something that for me was always a struggle was I didn't feel like I was allowed to be me. And I still struggle with this, but I'm much better at it than I used to be, where I didn't feel like it was okay just to be me. I had to people please, right? Bend to how other people were being. So that's, and in a way, that's kind of a gift, being able to bend to other people so that you can connect with them better. But what I found as I get older and I get more comfortable in me is that the less I bend, but I be authentically myself, but also let somebody else be themselves. That's the best place to sit in, because, well, okay, I could go off on a big tangent there. I'm gonna break it down to something simple. The past couple of years, I've really stepped into this feeling like this is who I am, and I'm happy being me. And I had a dream back in 2021, and the dream, I think about it every day, and it's also helped me on my walk with Jesus, is that I was in a car with my grandma in this dream. My grandma had passed away, but she was driving the car, and she never drove a car. So that was one of the weird parts about the dream. And then she was holding my hand, but my hand, I was a little kid. I was like 4 years old in the dream, right? And as she's driving, she leans over and she hugs me. And when she hugs me, I'm like, Grandma, you're going to wreck the car. Pay attention to where we're driving. What are you doing? And she says, don't worry about where we're going. Just love me. Don't worry about where you're going. Just love people. Now, clearly it was God in the dream coming to me in the form of my grandmother, because the message is the message that she gave me is the message of Jesus, of, love God and love people. And I was always so concerned with where I was going, or am I doing the right thing? And I'm not doing the right thing. I'm screwing it up and having this anxiety about it. And I didn't focus. I was so focused on me and not so focused on other people and how I can serve them and just showing up for them and just loving on them. And as I've learned to remember that dream and understand why it's important, things have gotten better and better and better. So the less I'm concerned if I'm doing the right thing or not, and the more I'm focused on showing up for people, the better things have gotten. So I forget the question that you asked, but I think that answered it. I think that in a roundabout kind of way, I think I got to the answer of it. But for me, that's been a huge thing for me, because I was always so self-centered, but not in a arrogant way. It was the reverse, in like almost a pessimistic kind of way. And so understanding I don't need to be focused on me. I need to be focused on how I can serve, and that things have gotten so much better out of that.
Yeah, you definitely did answer the question, Rob. So,
Okay.
so first off, yes, thank you for answering the question. It was about what shifted for you to allow you to be your authentic self, and your answer very, very much resonates with me, because that was the big shift for myself. Is that to take the focus off of myself and to put the focus on serving others and loving them and giving my all to them and not being selfish. And you're absolutely right. That's what God wants us to do. That's the message that, he gave me and he gave you. And then that's what it says in scripture is that we should do. And it seems pretty simple. We're just selfish and arrogant and self-centered, and, everything is about me. And hopefully, there's shifts in this world and that will change. And, there's people like yourself that help to make a difference. So when you decided that, okay, I'm not going to please others, and, it's not coming from a place of selfishness, we'll say, to please others. When you made that conscious choice, what did you decide to do? Is that when you said, hey, I want to be a coach? Hey, I want to, like, what was the first thing you said? This is going to be my vehicle in with which to have this change in who I am.
Well, I was already certified as a coach at that point, but it was more of like, it's like a day-to-day, just life kind of thing. And I've really tried to not think of myself in two different areas of like the person that I am and the professional person that I am, right? The personal person, professional person. I try to blend those two together, because I feel like that's where I'm going to be best if I'm thinking of me, because I struggle with like business me and personal me. And like, I felt like I had to act different to be in a business, but that's like not true. Like the best business people that like the business is them, and they're just being themselves, bringing that out. Right. So learning that part, number one. But I think that dream and that the realization of that, and that's just a daily walk in life of, because like you said, I think naturally we're just born selfish. That's a book by Richard Dawkins, right? The selfish gene, like that we're supposed to be, or we were designed for survival. So survival, the fittest, means you've got to be selfish because you've got to think about surviving. Mm-hmm. But it's actually the opposite, where it's collaboration and serving other people. That's actually the way to get ahead. So it's like constantly every day for me fighting, I shouldn't say fighting, but trying to work in harmony with that side of myself that wants to be so selfish, and understanding like I don't need to be selfish. This doesn't need to be this way. And it's a constant redirection. So in business, sure, but just in my personal life, because every day, I was just thinking this yesterday, you see somebody you might not know, or you do know, and you like judge them immediately. And usually the judgments are negative, and the judgments might be true, but you'll have a judgment on somebody and it doesn't serve you or them in any way, shape, or form. So I try to I really try every day to recorrect those judgments in my own head. I don't need to say them out loud, but somebody doesn't know if I'm judging them or not. But when I see somebody and I think something negative, I try to say a prayer for them and try to say something good about them just to myself, because that for me is that constant redirection. And they say when you're flying, when astronauts are flying the space shuttle to the moon, it's about like 1 billion constant course corrections. Mm-hmm. So it's constantly every couple of seconds redirecting your course to make it to the moon. Yeah. And I feel like that's like the destination that we're going on. Like if I'm going to be on this destination of being the person that God created me to be, it's like micro course corrections all day long, every day, which sounds exhausting until you like get used to doing it. And then it's like, it feels good. It's like, oh man, I'm constantly working on myself. It's like the lifelong learning kind of mindset. So that's how I try to look at it. And I'm not great at it by any means, but I'm getting better every day.
Yeah, it definitely is a long-term project that, I always say, it's something that I'll be working on until the day I die, because, I think that's part of our mission in life. That's part of our goal in life, is to just continue to strive to, be like Jesus, and that we're just always going to fall short. And it's, part of the reason I think, we connected so well is because there's so many similarities in our journey. So a few years ago, same thing. I noticed I was being too judgy. And so every time that happened, someone cut me off in traffic and, first thought, right, the judgment thought. And then I'd be like, okay. And then I started saying a prayer for the person. I started doing it. I don't do it regularly any longer, because it helped to diminish and make me more aware. So essentially I still have to work on it all the time. I'm better at it where those random thoughts don't necessarily come in as frequently, right? I can catch them quicker, I guess. They'll still happen, but I can catch them quicker, right? And then, yes, I can say something positive about this, this person or my perception of what's going on.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of the improvement process, like you talked about, just that those course corrections. That's part of those course corrections, is that, you make enough of them, and then maybe they don't happen every few seconds, right? Maybe then they're every minute or every hour, you're able to stay on track for longer periods of time.
Yeah. And
that's what's helped me. Is, I still have to make a ton. I still have to work on it every day. it's still an uphill climb. Where I can go longer stretches is because I put in some of that work. And I guess it's just like anything else, right? It's just like working out your brain or working out your body, your muscles, whatever. You do something enough time, the repetition, you start having that muscle memory, if you will. Mm-hmm. And then, it's easier now. It's, like riding a bike, right? It's just, you don't even think about it. Driving a car, you don't even think about it.
And that's where you want to get to, not even having to think about it. It's just naturally what you do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So hopefully for both of us, we get to that point. So I want to touch on, Rob, because I know this was important for me, and I believe you talked about your son earlier. I want to talk about the impact, and a lot of what you've discussed has been that self journey, right? As it relates to others and wanting to impact others. I want to hear what you have to say about how did others play a role in that impact, like your family, for example. I know for me, that was a big thing to help drive me away from being selfish was, I have to take care of children, and, and I can't, even when they're young, I found myself being selfish, and I needed a big wake up call, as I've talked about on the show, to change and get away from that. So how have others, played a role in your change?
Yeah, well, my son for sure, he just turned 10 a couple of weeks ago. And when I found out that my ex-wife now was pregnant with him, like things started to just change. Like it was like, that was the beginning of my self-development, personal development journey. Like it was like a switch flipped, and I was like, I can't be the person that I am right now. It wasn't even like a choice. It just like happened, like an instinctual biochemical kind of thing just happened where I was like, okay, I need to change. Because I had addiction issues, man. I was addicted to a couple of different things, and which in turn makes you very selfish, right? Addiction makes you very selfish because you can't even see past you, because you've got to satisfy this craving before you can even think about anybody else. And the craving's never satisfied. It's a bottomless pit. It's an empty hole of nothing, of selfishness. So that jarred me to like, you got to really get a handle on this thing, and you've got to get a handle on your own life, because you can't be this version of yourself and be a good dad. At least that's how I looked at it. And other people might look differently. They can balance those things out. I don't know how. I couldn't balance those things out. That wasn't gonna work for me. And that was a journey, a really difficult, many years long journey of transformation that went on, me fighting a lot of it and then accepting a lot of it, and like just this ebb and flow of like change, right? But that was, going from your question, that's the biggest example of how him coming into this world changed me dramatically. And then it's interesting because I used to think that I wasn't able to change. I can recall my ex-wife and I being in an argument when I was in like my mid-20s, and she's like, you need to change these things about yourself. And I'm like, I can't. This is me. You got to just deal with me. Like I have to live with me, and I'm not happy about it. If you've got to live with me too, and you're probably not happy about it, I'm sorry, this is who I am. And I literally knew I can't change. And that was a very fixed mindset. Now, over the years, that has changed. And what I found very interesting about that was when somebody wants you to change and you start to change, you're probably not going to change in the ways that they want you to. It's not going to look how they expect it to look. And this is something I've realized recently, is like, when you change in your own unique way. So I'm sure you've had people in your life that you've wanted to change. I've had people in my life that I've wanted to change, and I've had people in my life who've wanted me to change. But when you do just make the decision and you start to transform, it doesn't end up looking the way you expect it. And it's really, really fascinating. I find that fascinating because we think, oh, they're going to change for the better and it's going to be perfect for exactly what I need. And that's not how it works. And that to me is a very groundbreaking thing for me to understand. Like, okay, I shouldn't want anybody to change for me. I should want them to change for themselves, because it's only going to look how it has to look for them. And so when it comes to other people, I changed, I had a bad relationship that I saw with my dad. My dad was okay with our relationship from what he had told me, but I was not okay with it. It needed to be different. It needed to be better. And I always wanted him to change. But then I started learning about forgiveness, and I was like, I understand what forgiveness means, but how do I actually forgive somebody? And so I decided I'm going to forgive him for stuff that he didn't even really feel like he did wrong or know that he did, right? But it was things that I was holding on to. And through me changing, it changed our relationship. Yeah. So, and this is, I guess, going to answer your question, is forgiveness is the biggest thing. And I understand why now, because when you forgive, you no longer hold on to something that you feel like somebody else has done to you, even if they don't even know they did it to you. And when you change, it changes other people, because you show up differently. When you show up differently, they show up differently. And I think that's the biggest thing with relationships for me in my life is, wow, when I show up more authentically, then my relationships are totally different than what they were before. Because I'm not showing up trying to people please, and I'm not showing up with a bunch of judgment. I'm just showing up. And when I show up, the other person shows up in a very positive way also.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that, because it amplifies that change always starts with the person in the mirror. It always starts with ourselves, or it should start, I should say. It should start with ourselves first. And we're always pointing fingers everywhere else, like you said, we want everyone else. And something you said really, really brought something to mind, is that it's always on God's timing. It's always on God. It's never on our timing. It's never on, we want this, we want it. Oh, I want it yesterday. And, it may take 5 years, right? It's never, it's never the way that we want it. And that's what I was hearing in what you were saying, in that wanting others to change, wanting to bend to your will, wanting them to adapt to the way that you wanted them to be, when God already has it all figured out. He already knows how it's going to work out, you know, in accordance with his will, and that it's always better than we ever imagined. You know, it's always better than we could have ever imagined. And so, you know, why would we be so I'll use the word ignorant to feel that, oh, my way is going to be the best way, when it just never is. And I was the same way. And when I, you know, went through all, you know, big changes in my life in 2020 and wrote my book and everything, in the beginning of my book, I wrote the introduction, and in there I wrote something to the effect, and I wrote it, and I wrote the introduction essentially for my family, for, you know, those I was closest to. And then, you know, I read it to them first, and then I just kind of, you know, modified it for everybody slightly, very little. And I wrote something in there that says something about, you know, my hope is that all the changes that I went through in that journey of, you know, the journey that I went through in writing the book, that they will impact others in the way that, you know, in the same type of way that it impacted me. And one thing my wife told me, or I don't even think she told me. I think she just commented this. It was early on when I was promoting my book and, you know, doing stuff on social media or whatever. And she made a comment on how she could see all the changes in me, all the positive ways that I had changed and become a better husband, become a better father, and become a different person. And one of the biggest things that I've become more in tune to in the past few years, and it's a really special, you know, it's like a gift that I take it as a gift, and it's something really special, is whenever I can see someone through God's eyes or through someone else's eyes, and see the beauty and the differences in that person, that like warms my heart so much. And the fact that she could see that I had changed and had improved, and that it was a reflection back on how I was in those relationships, like that in essence told me, that was like God saying, hey, you're on the right track. Hey, you know, you're doing a good job. Like, keep putting in the work, right? You're not there. You got a long way to go, but keep doing the work.
Yeah.
And so when you were sharing how it was for you, that's exactly what I heard, is that and tell me if that's the case, that it was the same way for you, that like you're seeing that you putting in the work on yourself, you're seeing how that impacts others, and it's reflecting back.
Yeah, it's weird sometimes, because there's certain people in my life that I had, you know, I just never had good thoughts about. And so I would show up just like trying to avoid them, trying to not spend any time with them, because they made me feel uncomfortable, and they made me feel like I felt bad being around them. Right. And when I started to like change that, and I started to show up differently and like ignore those feelings and just be like, I need to just be here for this person and just be me and see what happens. And it was kind of like an experiment. Then it was like, they just acted differently around me. There was more connection between us. There was more understanding. And I didn't feel like this instinct to run. It was like, oh, I feel comfortable in this space. And so they also acted differently. It seemed to bring peace to the situation, and instead of like this tension. And what I realized was, well, I have the power, well, through God is working through me, right? But I have the power to show up this way and I have power to bring peace to the situation that wasn't there before. And it seems like it was all on me to do it. I had to make that choice. And that's kind of cool. It's that personal responsibility. Wow, I have the ability to do this. It's not, I'm a victim of it. My mentor, his name is Ray. And Ray, one of the things he always says to me is, everything is a blessing depending on how you look at it. And so he started asking me, how can you see these difficult relationships as blessings? And if they were blessings, then what could you learn from them? And that's the big thing that I learned. If I show up a certain way, it's going to change how the situation is. And that was just mind blowing to me. Like, holy cow, all these years. I wish somebody would have told me that a long time ago. Yeah. But even if they did, I probably wouldn't have done it or been able to do it differently back then. So it all happens on God's time.
That is great advice from Ray. And like you said, a couple important things in what you said there. It's all important. A couple of things that stand out are that it's, God's doing the work through you, that you just have to be open to it. You just have to be open and say, okay, I'm going to change how I interact. And then you saw that just like magically, all of a sudden those interactions are better. And I've seen that same thing. And it's one of those things where you're like, boy, why was I such a fool before? Why didn't I, like you said, why didn't I learn this 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's crazy that I like to say, if you're not listening, God will turn up the volume, or he'll, keep giving you different ways to, to become aware of something.
Well, yeah, that's what happens too, right? Because when you have, I'm strictly just talking about relationships, but like when you have bad relationships in your life, they're always running in the back of your head. At least that's how I am, especially when it's like close family. Like my dad, it was a tumultuous relationship for me that I always was thinking about. I was always thinking about it in a negative way. And I was always kind of blaming myself and blaming him. And I don't think about it anymore. Mm-hmm. Not in like, I don't think about him. I do think about him and we have a good relationship, but it's not weighing on me. Yeah. And that freedom is everything, man. That freedom is, especially, and with addictions too, right? When you're addicted to something, it weighs on you. You can't stop thinking about it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm kind of realizing this now, but maybe the tumultuous relationship with him and my addictive relationship, like maybe the addictions were caused by the tumultuous relationship with him. And the better that relationship gets, the better the addiction issues get, right? Because trying to feed one with the other, I don't know. That's just something that popped in my head. But it seems that when the relationships have gotten significantly better, and there's been so much more mental freedom because of that.
Yeah, very true. Very, very true. So how is it manifesting where you are now? How is that manifesting itself in the work that you do, right? In the work that you do and, helping others through be better leaders, building their podcasts. I mean, how is it manifesting in what you do?
I'm learning to actively actually listen to people, because when you listen to people, you can help them realize what's wrong. And I was never one to try to fix somebody, but I was not a good listener in the sense that I just wanted to hear what I wanted to hear. And I was excited for me to talk, not to hear what the person had to say. And that's the biggest change I think in myself is I think I've always been sensitive, but my sensitivity was an issue before because I was so focused on me. But now my sensitivity is more on how can I help this person if I listen to them effectively. If I'm sensitive and I see that as a gift, then I can hear what they're saying and I can get to the heart of what's wrong. Or I might not even know what's wrong, but I can ask them the questions to get them to the answer. And that is the biggest thing, is asking questions. This is something else my mentor also taught me, and I did not understand it at first. Like, you have to ask better questions to yourself and to other people and about situations. If you don't ask questions, and if you don't ask the right questions, you're going to get bad answers or no answers at all. There's actually a book. And so when I coach people, I take them through. Did you ever read QBQ?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So QBQ, man, I live by this book with so many people that I work with and with myself. It's just asking those better questions. So, just the core of it, I was just going through this earlier, so it's on the top of my mind. But any question that you ask should begin with what or how. So do not start with why, when, or who. Start with what or how. You must contain the I. So it's not about they, them, we, or you. It's about I, and then focus on action, right? what can I do? That's the simplest way to break that book down. You just ask yourself, what can I do? Not, why did this person ruin my life? It's like, what can I do to make it better? And when you ask yourself that question, you come up with better answers. And so I think that's the nexus of it, which you're a coach too, Rick. So you know this, and I'm sure this is what you do too. You just ask better questions, and that helps people find the answers for themselves. We don't have to have the answers. We just have to ask the right questions. And that even means for us too. I don't have to have the answers. I just need to ask myself better questions, and I'll have better answers. It's amazing. It's so simple, but it's incredible. Yeah,
it is so simple. And so many of the things we're talking about are simple if we just, would either pause or take a step back or, try to reflect or have that external view, then we could see some of the things that are needed, like asking better questions. So you and I can probably chat for a long, long time. So in honor of the episode in the show, we'll get to a couple of the key questions that we always ask here at the end of the program. And one of them is about spark moments, because we feel at iSpark Change is that, our lives are filled with these spark moments. And these are times where there's the actions of yourself or the actions of another have that ripple effect that goes far beyond that initial act. So share a story of, positive example of a time where someone else impacted your life, or you impacted someone else's life, where maybe you didn't see that impact right away, but, down the road, you could see that it was a big ripple effect on, either of your lives.
Well, I already mentioned a couple of them, but one I will mention again, my mentor. So I'll go into a little bit more about Ray. So Ray he has been a business coaching consultant for as long as I've been alive. I was born in 1983. He started his coaching business when he was 40 in 1983. And he came into my life, and I never had a mentor, and I never even really knew what that meant. But as I was learning about what that meant, he came into my life, and I was asking God, like, hey, I really need a mentor. Can you bring somebody to me? And my friend said, we should meet up with this guy, Ray. He's really interesting. You're not going to understand what he's talking about, but I think you need to meet him. And I was like, all right. So that was back in 2018. And shortly after that, I asked him, would you mentor me? And one of the things he would tell me from day one was the thing that I just said about the blessing. He said, everything is a blessing. I think I was complaining that day about somebody in my life. And he goes, how would that person be a blessing if you looked at them correctly in your life? And I was like, what? Actually, I was like annoyed by the question. Like, what does that even mean, a blessing? This person drives me insane. Like, how could they be a blessing in my life? I'm trying to figure out how can I get them out of my life? And he goes, well, how could they be a blessing if you looked at it correctly? And I was like, who the heck is this guy? Like, because it was such like just to me, it was just like an asinine question. It was like, that doesn't even make any sense to me. I don't even understand. And so over the years, I'm talking about it today, right? I'm talking about it. That was probably around 6 years ago. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, he's like 100% right. So now I try to look at situations like that. So that was a spark moment for me, for sure, of like, because I think when something truly groundbreaking happens to you, it doesn't make sense to you right away. All right. It doesn't, it just is like, it's so outside of your field of understanding that it doesn't even resonate, and you have to like sit with it for a long time. Another one I can remember, when I started listening to Tony Robbins years ago, this was probably about 10 years ago, I started listening to Tony Robbins. And one of the things that he said initially was because I wanted to start building. At that point, about 10 years ago, I was starting to think I need to start my own business, but I had no idea where to start. And I was like, how do you even have a business? And he goes, the biggest part of business is serving people. And I was like, what? Why would me having a business and making money mean I have to serve people? That didn't make any sense. And that's how it's amazing to look back and see how off base you were. I was so off base. That concept was so ridiculous to me. Like, I need money. I need customers. What is me serving people going to do? Like, that's how far off I was. And now 10 years later, I'm like, well, obviously that's the answer. And it's clear, right? If you're going to have a successful business, the only way to have a truly successful business, it's not manipulating people, is to be serving them. And if you're serving people, then you're going to have a great business because people need the service or the product that you offer because it's helping their life. Those are two spark moments that I can think of. I could name a bunch more, but those two really stick out to me as like, And then the dream that I explained too, the dream about loving other people. That was,
of course.
But that one more like I already understood the concept of service. I already understood the concept that people can be blessings in your life. And so I think God gave me that one as like a continuation of this. Like you're still worrying too much about where you're going. You're not focusing enough on loving people. And so I'm still in the process of seeing that one come to fruition. So those are three big ones. Yeah.
And thank you for sharing all of those because they're all great examples of how that ripple effect continues on to impact you and many others, that you impact on your coaching or in your podcast. So before we get to our final question here on the show, Rob, how can people connect with you? How can they find out more about what you're doing, your work, your podcast, everything?
The Unstuck Movement is the podcast. It's on all podcast platforms, so check it out. It's on my Facebook, or on all my social media, but also on Spotify, Apple, and all those places, the Unstuck Movement. If you want to just chat with me or reach out to me, Facebook or LinkedIn, those are the best places. Just search Rob Z. Wentz. You'll find me. Shoot me a DM. I'd love to connect. But I have started a platform for people who I find podcasting and content creation, video and audio in general, just to be really the nexus for creating your platform, building your business, but also the self-improvement you get from creating your own platform is something that's not talked about enough. And I love to help people launch their platforms, be able to monetize their platforms, make them real, tangible entities that improve their lives, improve their business, help them become the expert at what they do, but also inspire others. So if you want to launch a podcast like a pro, you can go to my website, robzwentz.com, for the Pro Podcaster Academy, and check that out for yourself. I'd love to guide you on that path.
Fantastic. Well, we will put that in the show notes and make sure that everyone has access to that information. Okay, Rob, one final question, because our goal at iSpark Change is to positively impact 1 billion people through our upcoming social impact social media platform and through our community. And so we know we can't do this alone. We know we need the help of impactful leaders and heroes like yourself to help show others the way, because many people are either acting like we once did, where they're selfish, or they feel they're too small to make a difference. So we value your thoughts and opinions as a social impact hero. So I want you to peer into the future, peer into our iSpark Change crystal ball, and tell me, what can the world become if everyone starts focusing on serving others and believes they can impact our future?
What can somebody become when they do that?
What can the world become?
Oh, wow. What can the world become? Well, the world would become a collaborative place where everybody's helping each other. If you find your path, or make your mess your message. Everybody has a mess. Some of us have turned that mess into a message. Some people are still stuck in that mess. If we all get through our mess and turn it into a message that helps others, then we all are kind of like entrepreneurs in our own way of like, we all have a spark of that entrepreneurial mindset when you find the breakthrough in your life, the thing that you never thought you could get through. And now you've broken through and you got through that thing. That becomes a vehicle to serve other people. And I think that's what we would all become, is servants to each other, which is what Jesus taught, right? Be of service, like show up and be of service. And I think that's what we're all supposed to become. And if we can truly do that, man, the world would be unbelievable. It would be amazing to have everybody serving one another on a super high level, because your integrity would be so high and nobody would be stuck where they are. They would have the ability to find those breakthroughs that they need. That's a hard question to answer, but that's how I'm going to answer it.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful answer. And what a beautiful world that would be. And hopefully that will happen in our lifetime.
Yeah,
so
amen.
Thank you for taking the time today to share your heart and wisdom with our audience, Rob. You came in and you over-delivered, as I knew you would. Your desire to support others is evident, and you're filled with passion, humility, and you lead with a heart of service and gratitude, which tells me you are Continue to have success in all facets of life. And this is only the beginning of your time as a social impact hero.
Thank you so much, Rick. I received that and I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
All right, Impact Heroes, it's our stories that connect us all, and we loved hearing Rob's today. Rob Wentz, you're not only an inspiring and amazing human being, you truly are an iSpark Change social impact hero. We'll see you all next time.
Do you want Rick to speak at your event? Here's what others have to say.
Did not know his story, and it was so inspirational, and his presence on stage, his authenticity was just incredible.
Performance made me feel some type of way. My name is Craig Siegel.
If you're looking for a speaker for your next event, hire Rick. I promise you this, you will not be disappointed.
Visit rickcornelis.com to book him today.
Remember, Impact Heroes, every positive action can be a spark moment that has a ripple effect that spreads far beyond the initial act. So go out there and spark change. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this episode, then please smash that 5-star rating on iTunes or Spotify and leave a review. We value your comments and we want to hear from you in the community. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and we'll see you next week on the iSpark Change podcast.